Hello and welcome to Catamount Community Connection, our public affairs program that we air each and every Sunday across all 5 radio stations. I'm Brian Collamore. Thank you for joining us. And we call the show Catamount Community Connection because we speak with professionals, nonprofit, political folks, business people. And our program is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. Believe it or not, August is not that far away, folks. And the 180th Vermont State Fair will be coming up in August of 2026. So thank you very much for the Agricultural Society's continued support of this program. Today, we are going to be speaking with Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges. This will, in all likelihood, be the final time we speak with Mike, at least as the mayor of the city. We're recording this on the last day of January, so January 31st, 2026. You folks will hear this next Sunday, I believe, is February 7th. So when this airs, we'll already be into February. And as most people know that are listening to the show, the mayor had announced a couple of weeks ago now that he would not be running again. In fact, he would be stepping down from his position. So it's been, I don't know, we've done 100 and some odd shows, and I bet you've been on at least 20 of them.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing. But
it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed all the time together, Brian. Like, this has been a fantastic thing for the community to have this radio program.
Yep.
And you know, when the station established it and you decided to host it, I thought it was going to be great regardless of my presence on the show. But I've been happy to be part of it, and thank you so much for having me over there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about different things.
Yeah.
One of the things that's come up, and I know you've heard this from not just me, but other folks, is the timing of the announcement. And I did not ever read the city charter. I don't know how things fall together, but I know you well enough to know you're smart enough that you triggered the announcement intentionally. And I'm just sort of curious. A lot of people have said, well, you know, if he'd waited 4 more days or done it 4 days earlier, it would have presented a different thing. Tell us, I guess, why you chose to announce it. I'm not sure now what date it was, but anyway.
Yeah, so I announced on the 29th that I was going to resign on the 27th.
Of February.
Right,
Okay.
so a month later. So there's 2 components. One, I actually didn't have the opportunity in hand until the day I announced, right? So I had been having discussions. They said, hey, we want you to do this. And I said, okay, great. And then I didn't have the offer letter till the same day. I did, announce in the morning, and I got the offer letter in the afternoon. But the idea basically being that was the earliest that I could have, made the decision. It would have been great if they had called me a month ago. And I could have waited. And actually, the first question when they called me and I asked, I said, well, can you wait a year? Because I got a year left of my term. And the answer was no. And so we'll talk about the opportunity, I'm sure, during the show. But the real timing of the announcement was I wanted to make sure that I put the notice out there as soon as possible so that it wasn't creating any issues there. The second side of the day that I'm stepping down, right, I have to start by the 24th at this company. It's a couple days overlap. They're willing to give me a few days. But it also falls in line with being before town meeting day. And there is an aspect of making sure the voters have the ability to vote for their next mayor. And,
okay.
And if I was in seat on, say, town meeting day, then the board president would take over, and that's fine. That's a totally cool option. And they elect a new board president every year, and that would have been a thing. But this actually provides an option for the voters to have their say on who they want to be the next mayor.
Okay. So I guess my next question, and again, I'm not familiar with the city charter, so I don't know how it reads. Is it going to be strictly a write-in function, or could someone, and I don't know who it would be, I guess somebody on the board, request a special election just for the mayor's race?
So we just got the show is airing about a week after we got it, but we just got a professional opinion from the attorney saying that it's write-in only. It specifically says in the charter at the next annual meeting. Right,
okay.
So that's on town meeting day. The charter is a little bit different than the state, but for the most part, it's the next annual meeting in our charter says that this is how it has to take place, and that would mean the upcoming town meeting day. So it is write-in votes, and while there weren't petitions, right? Because petitions closed on Monday and I announced it on Thursday. It's about the same timeline. It's only 3 more days than those who would turn their petitions in. Right?
Okay. So, again, just from, and I can't vote either way, so because I'm in Rutland town, I would just urge people, if they have a very strong interest in this, to make sure they attend town meeting
Absolutely.
and vote in whatever fashion you choose. At the moment, there's only one candidate, I think, and again, we're recording this on the 31st of January, folks. You're going to hear it on the 7th, so that's the danger of this show is when we record it, stuff changes in the interim.
Yeah.
But at this moment, speaking again on around noontime on the 31st, there's only one person that has shown interest in becoming a write-in candidate. I don't know if there's others who will, in the next 7 days, choose to announce or not. But, people can attend the town meeting. People should attend their town meetings and then vote accordingly the way they feel that they should.
Yeah, I think there'll be plenty of people interested in it. We've heard a lot of discussion. I don't know who will actually. Like you said, there's one person interested in it now, and they've declared that they're running. And from there, it's just making sure that the candidates get out and advertise and market like they have. And again, like I said, it's right. I wish I could have done it sooner, but it's right in the election cycle. It's still plenty of time for candidates to get their message out over the next 30 days or so.
And it's been, I don't want to say unusually cold, but it's been cold. And so I'm not sure that any of the potential candidates will be standing. Are there still 4 wards, or is it 3?
No, so there's 4 wards in Rutland,
okay.
But it's all at large, right? So they'll go at the polling place. They'll hopefully stand there.
Yeah.
But you should see them out for their honk and waves in the next few weekends.
Okay.
It's cold though.
I
You're
know.
Right. You got to get out there and bear the chili.
Yeah. It's not like the general election, which is in November, and sometimes it gets
You guys
chilly,
have it easy.
but it's not cold. So okay, so that explains to me at least the timing of the announcement, and hopefully, because how people
theorize.
Yeah,
that'd be nice.
This was intentional and was not fair to everybody, but in a way, you actually have allowed the voters to decide, instead of putting someone who's on the Board of Aldermen for that full year
right.
until the next election to effect a change.
And Brian, I've heard both sides of the argument. Like, that has its risks and it has its rewards.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, this is a free and democratic society, and free and fair elections are really important. So I think that's probably, it won't be a problem. We'll end up with good candidates because people care about this community and people have the opportunity to elect those candidates.
Again, as a semi-reporter here, I have to ask the next question, and I'm pretty sure I have a pretty good idea what you're going to say. Since there's only that one candidate, are you in any sort of position to endorse one candidate over another?
They may not want my endorsement.
Well, okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But in all reality, I would certainly review the candidates, and if any of them ask for my endorsement, depending what their policies are and the approach that they're going to take, I would absolutely consider it. I'm not ready to say right now, obviously, but I'd certainly consider endorsing the next candidate because, look, I know that the entire city of Rutland did not agree with me, but I did try to represent the entire city of Rutland the best way possible, because that's our job, right? You're elected by the people that want you to be in position, but then you have to represent everybody.
Yeah.
And my job in all reality was to do that, and so my recommendation of who should go next will hold some weight, I'm sure, and I'll make that choice pretty carefully.
Yeah, and traditionally it's been a nonpartisan election with neither Democrat, Republican, or I guess there's a progressive faction here in town as well, kind of like running on that particular party.
That's right. And unlike Burlington, we're not supposed to declare it, right? It's supposed to be ambiguous from your national party standpoint.
Right.
So.
Okay, so those are 2 of the things that I had kind of lined up to talk about. And by the way, folks, in case you haven't figured it out, we're speaking with Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges, who this will be his last appearance on this show.
As mayor, at least. As
mayor, yeah. We'll certainly always make room for you with regard to other things. Let me think. So if this is airing on the 7th, in 20 days from today, Mike will effectively end his campaign, or not his campaign, but his term as the city mayor. And then town meeting week will follow that, and there will be a write-in ballot for whoever that next mayor will be. To be fair and transparent, I'll probably find out next week. I think there's a Board of Aldermen meeting, and again, as we record this, it's in the future, but by the time you hear it, it will have already happened.
Yeah.
I know there's a board meeting on Monday the 2nd, and at that point, someone else may say, hey, I think I could do a reasonably good job. I want to throw my hat in. Or they may not. I don't know. Because it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody on the Board of Aldermen. It could be anybody, as long as they're a city resident, can run for the position. So just to explain again, we're talking with Mike Doenges in sort of a, I don't know if it's a farewell.
It's called a retrospective.
Yeah, you're too young to imagine that this won't be the final time that we talk. You probably won't be the mayor the next time, but you could always come back and run again later in your career too.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's part of the process here with my decision-making processes. And you and I have talked about this, right? Different.
Yep.
We were at an event once, and you're like, well, yeah, if you're going to consider this type of thing, these are the things you have to think about. I ran for mayor to try to use my skills and my my passion for the city of Rutland to get things moving, put it on a certain track, get certain projects done. And while I was in the office, Brian, there were plenty of people that talked to me about future politics roles and how I could continue to serve in different areas. That was never my passion, right? My passion is for this city, and I wanted to help this city, and I think we've been able to do that. And so when I considering the choice when this job offer came up of saying, am I going to stay in politics, at least in the short term, like you said,
right,
at least in the future, or was I planning on going back to my 25 plus year career in technology? It was a hard decision, but it was clear from a future, like what I want to do in the future standpoint. But from what I wanted to do for the city, it was a very difficult decision. So.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, it's crossed your mind before that, because everything sort of is a ladder,
right.
In some ways. So you're the mayor of the city of Rutland. The next step up might have been a member of the General Assembly in the state, whether that's a House seat or a Senate seat. And then from there, the next one is sort of a statewide potential. And there are, I think, 5 or 6 statewide offices. So at the moment, those are sort of out. Yeah. I assume by next...
I really enjoyed the executive administrative side of things, not necessarily the legislative.
Okay.
So, but there's only so many steps there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But yeah, so right now, and I think, let's be honest, right? I'm resigning in the middle of a term. And no matter how you look at that, that's not completing my commitment, and I appreciate that. And I know the choice I'm making here. Again, part of government is the ability to elect a new leader, so we won't have a big gap, which is great. It'll be 10 days, and the board president will take care of things for those few days. But I do understand that people have to consider that. So that was a big part of the process too. Is like this may put an end to, or at least a very long pause on any political aspirations, which, to be honest, I don't have those right now. So we'll see what happens in the future.
Okay. I know there were at least 2 issues that seem to resonate with a certain part of the population. One of them was the so-called redesigning of the lane structure on both Woodstock Avenue and North Main Street. Lately, it seems like the North Main Street piece was even more, I don't know if it was annoying to people or not understood, where you, right after it intersects with Woodstock Ave, it collapses into that one lane.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing. And then I guess the rec-to-rector situation was another, both of which have since, taken care of themselves, one fashion or another.
Sure.
So I realize, and trust me, I do, we will have in this coming week, as we record this, by the time you hear it, you will already know what my votes were on both the Supreme Court nominees, which is going to be taken up on was taken up on last Tuesday, and also the resolution that frames, a strong disapproval of the way that Trump has handled the ICE situation in various cities. So I do know and I do understand when you represent the county, as I do, so you have the city, so you have a certain amount of people, maybe it's
about
16,000.
Yep.
Mine's a little bit larger, not that much so, but a little bit larger. But each town sort of has their own identity and their own leanings politically. So it's hard sometimes to come up with what you think is the best way to go in terms of a vote. You try to depend on constituent email or phone calls or physical interaction. I'll be out somewhere and I see somebody, hey, come over here. I want to tell you how I feel about blank. And so I do understand that it's never 100-0.
No.
That's what I'm going to tell you.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, but very rarely.
So we'll call it the road diet or the road reconfiguration. So that first one, that was a tough decision, but I'm a data-driven person. And that was very clear during my campaign. It was very clear in the messaging. It was very clear during the reconfiguration of the road.
Yep.
The data says that this will not impact traffic flows in a major way, except for one particular intersection. Turned out to be a different intersection. So the data was a little bit off, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then it did say that our left-hand turn accidents were somewhere between 20 and 40 left-hand turn accidents a year on Woodstock Ave and North Main Street combined would go down. And boy, did the data show exactly the same thing. So our travel times, you can, the Regional Planning Commission collects all this data for us. So our travel times on Woodstock Ave and North Main Street have increased by 1 second per trip, meaning like if it used to take you 35 seconds to get somewhere, it takes you 36. Or if it took you a minute 20 before, now it takes you a minute 21 on average, right? And even at the busiest time, it's only 2 or 3 seconds. And the accidents have gone down dramatically. The left-hand turn accidents have just plummeted from what was 20 and 25 to 3. And that is the reason that we first started looking at it. But the other benefits, which people, it's interesting, the argument was against doing it for these benefits, for these reasons. So businesses said, well, people won't be able to get in and out of my business. But because it slows the traffic and because you have an extra safe lane to turn in and out, it's actually easier for people to get in and out of businesses. So we're hoping it takes a little longer to get economic data like that, but we're hoping to see the long-term economic data reflect that. Business owners on those streets, though, have all anecdotally said, the ones that I've spoken with at least, that it has improved traffic flow in and out. People are still coming just as much as they did before. So I'm happy to hear that it didn't have the negative impacts that we expected, and it did have some of the positive ones that we expected.
We don't need to, I don't think, talk again about the rec department situation. That's been resolved, and I think most people have moved on from... And
April is doing an absolutely phenomenal job. She has a killer team. Everybody that's working there. It's about the passionate leaders in the city, and that's why I have great department heads that I'm going to miss greatly, Brian, as I transition.
Yeah. So. We're talking with Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges, who will be leaving office on February 27th. So by the time you hear this, it'll only be 20 days left in his term. And we're going to take our first break here on Catamount Community Connection, and we'll be back with the mayor in just a minute. Welcome back to Catamount Community Connection, our weekly 1-hour program where we talk with community leaders from the business, professional, nonprofit, and today political arenas. We're joined by Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges in what will be his final appearance as mayor on this show. And we've talked a little bit about the timing of the announcement and the fact that Mike didn't get the opportunity, when we're going to talk about that sort of near the end of the show, at Cisco until the same day that he announced it. So he was in a position where he had to wait at least until he knew he had somewhere to go. And so we talked about a little bit about that. We have, I don't know if I've guessed that there'll be at least one candidate for the write-in election on town meeting day. That person has already made it pretty clear on Facebook that he is running and interested. There are other potential candidates, both that could come from the Board of Aldermen, but could be anybody else outside of politics. Sometimes that is a refreshing change. Sometimes it puts certain challenges in the way of, it's kind of like one of those, when you don't have a lot of name recognition, it's more challenging to get people to decide to put your name down. Yeah. So there we are with that. And I did ask whether Mike had any particular endorsement ideas about who it was that might be running. And to be fair, since there's only one candidate announced as we record this on January 31st, it's sort of I think, a question that he can't answer yet because he doesn't know who's going to go. Now, from what I understand, you are going to stay local. You're going to continue to live in the city. And again, we'll talk about the job in a second. So you will be able to vote for whoever puts their name up as a write. These will be write-in candidates, folks. So I think that's important for people to realize when the ballot is presented at town meeting, it won't have people's name on the ballot that are running. You're going to have to write that name in. And that is a little bit different than maybe what would be a traditional election where you've got, 5 or 6 names for 2 positions or something like that. So just want to make people aware. And again, this is only for the city residents. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else in the county. You will have your own elections to decide whether it's a board of selectmen or a school board. Let's talk a little bit about, and I just wrote the word accomplishments down because I think, it was funny. I went and looked up the list of mayors, and this goes all the way back to like 1893. I don't think there's anybody around that really, certainly can remember that, but has any interest necessarily. But when I came to town, Bill Foley was the mayor.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I know in the interim, Jack Daly had been the mayor, then he was lieutenant governor, and then he came back and was mayor again. So he had 2 terms from 61 to 65 and again 81 to 87. But Bill Foley was mayor when I came. And then Gil Godnick from 73 to 81. He also had a career in the General Assembly as a senator from Rutland County. Not sure how many terms. I'm going to guess it was at least 3 or 4 terms. And I think, just my opinion, because I knew him so well, I just thought he was a wonderful, wonderful man. He did so many things for people very quietly, and nobody ever knew. He ran furniture companies. Obviously, we still have his name attached to a number of furniture stores in Rutland. But I was in there one day as a salesperson for the radio station trying to get him to buy ads, and a family came in, and they had just come into town. They had just moved, and they had no money and no furniture. And before I left, he arranged to have them delivered beds and couches and never took a penny.
Really?
Yeah. So that's the kind of guy he was. Yeah. And he was a tremendous...
and that reputation lives on till today.
Yeah.
People talk about what a wonderful mayor he was and how much he got done. And
Now, if I did my math correctly, after Jack Daly served till 87, Jeff Wenberg was mayor. And I think he has the longest tenure of any mayor in the history of the city. I could be off, but I tried in my mind to... He was from 87 to 99, so it's a fairly long string. Anyway, for what it's worth. And then John Casarino came in after Jeff, and he was there for, I think, about 6 years. Chris Loris, and people that are listening will definitely, I'm starting to talk about names that, oh yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
He was there from 2007 to 17, so for 10 years. And his bid for a 6th term was defeated by, at the time, city councilor, they call it. He's a board of alderman. I don't know why they use councilor, but Dave Allaire. And that was in March of 2017. Dave was in there from 17 to 23. And then when Mike came in 23, Dave was defeated. Now he's back on the board. And so those are the lists of mayors. And again, even though it's a nonpartisan office, I think most people have an idea of, what direction people leaned in terms of politics. Gil Godnick was a Democrat. Jeff Wenberg, a Republican, as far as I know. Chris Loris actually was both, because when he ran as a House member, he was a Republican, but then later I think was a Democrat. So anyway.
And I'm a moderate, right? It's hard for people to pin me down, and that's because I can't pin myself down, right? I really do focus on the issues more than kind of the party, and that's always been the way I lean. And I think, it's an interesting thing to see Rutland have, such a great history in mayors and people who cared about different things and did it different ways.
Yeah. Of course, I don't think anybody can ever beat Gilly for Gilly-isms. He really could use the language in strange but memorable ways. Anyway, I like that guy so much. He was really, really one of my favorites. But anyway, let's talk about accomplishments, because everybody on that list that I just read certainly was involved with something that changed life in the city for its residents. And I'll just leave it up to you, because I know, you have your own list of what you saw as important issues when you came in. Some of that work is still in progress. Some of it maybe has been accomplished. I don't know.
Sure. There's two aspects of what I would consider accomplishments, right? The ideas and concepts that we had when I started, and the things that came up during my mayorship, right? So I came in very economic development focused, right? How do we build Rutland again? How do we get things moving, right? Our permits were averaging between 10 to 15 building permits a year.
Yeah.
Right? Now I'm leaving office in the last 2 years, we've had over 250 units, so whether that's apartments or houses, permitted in the last 2 years. That's massive change, right? Because we focused on housing. We'll talk about that a little bit more. The TIF district, things like that. But some of the things that I want to talk about that weren't necessarily in my plan, public safety, right? And the homeless challenges and environmental things like the 3-acre rule. Like, none of those were necessarily big parts of my initial campaign, Brian.
Right. Yep.
They became parts of my last year's campaign because they were such big deals and big issues for our residents. And it became something that not only did we need to focus on, but we focused on and we were able to achieve. So whether it was supporting legislation in Montpelier over the past few years to really help the state's attorneys prosecute charges faster, whether it's putting, feet to the ground when it came to actually getting police officers back out on the street and finding ways to get our department staff back up to full operations. Those things are really big deals, and they've had amazing impacts on our community. When I started as mayor, the police department had 27 working officers, right? Sworn officers, or less, depending on who was out. It was very difficult for us to fully staff shifts. Now we are fully staffed to budget, and we're looking for officers beyond the budget, which the board has approved, and then next year's budget's even higher. So while previously, over the previous 10, 15 years, the department had shrunk, especially the last 6 years, but before me becoming mayor, and that was a hiring and recruitment thing and a budget thing, we were able to regrow that department, and now you hear from those downtown businesses, thank you for paying attention to the request. We put on the pressure to my office. They did that, and we pushed back with the response of, hey, here's what you've asked for. And I'm super proud of the fact that our department is the best in the state. We have Rutland City, like any other police department, has its challenges. Yep. But officers flock to come work here, and our citizens love our department, and you don't find that in any other part of the state of Vermont. You know what I mean?
You mentioned the 3-acre rule. One of the other things I looked up before we went on is the situation that came about last week with the PUC, which is the Public Utilities Commission. And on January 30th, so last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, as you hear the show, the state's statutory requirement to implement the clean heat standard has ended. The Public Service Commission declared that in a January 30th order. What is not clear to me is whether that takes away anybody's ability to sue the state. I don't think it does. All this does is reduce the obligations and requirements of fuel dealers to put this huge structure in place. And so I'm hoping that with that, I'll just, tell you how I feel. I would like to see that whole thing repealed that allows anybody, not just in Vermont, anybody in the world to sue Vermont for not meeting its targeted goals of the emission standards. I just don't see that as a healthy thing because we're all going to pay for it as soon. And people have already stepped up to the plate to sue the state. So all those legal fees are borne by the residents of the state of Vermont. And I'm not sure that anybody wants to pay for them. But anyway, I thought I'd mention that. There's a great quote here, too, at the bottom of this. The news was received with relief that this clean heat standard has been basically killed. Judy Taranovich, who was a longtime Procter fuel dealer, said, they will be back, but it's nice to have a little breathing room. And I think she pretty well sums it up, that there are still folks that I see on a daily basis in the halls at the State House that want this back in place. And I don't know whether it will or it won't, but I thought I'd mention that because part of that was, this whole water quality issue is kind of wrapped around itself. And part of that was not just the clean heat standard, but also the 3-acre rule.
And that is something that we continue to fight.
Yeah, it's still there, and it's still affecting a lot of people. And if you think about with common sense, someone in Rutland City being able to really affect Lake Champlain, which is about 45, 47 miles away, it doesn't, all the stuff between there and here that it can pick up along the way, to me is more important than what we do here. But I'm not an environmental expert. I have no idea. But all I know is I see and hear pain from people that have fallen under this 3-acre rule.
There's two things with the 3-acre rule that are really challenging for those who don't understand. One is you have to come up with if you own property that's more than 3 acres, you have to come up with a way to remediate the stormwater.
Right. So
that it doesn't flood into the rivers and streams, right, at an accelerated rate. It's literally about time to dissipation is kind of what the math is. And then if you can't remediate it because you don't have the space on your property or whatever, there's these things called impact fees. The combination of the impact fees and the remediation costs are in the millions for some of these 3-acre properties. Yeah. These businesses that have been here for 100 years are like the fair that's been there for more than 100 years, right? Almost 2. We're on 180. So that's hard to take. And I think just like the clean heat standard and just like the 3-acre rule, we need to think about how we implement those plans and give an accurate and real timeline to be able to make some of those things happen. You can't just say, hey, in 5 years you have to meet this standard and we said so. Right. That was the difficult thing for people to swallow on both of them. You know what I mean?
So we've talked about the economic situation in terms of some of your accomplishments. The TIF district is another one.
Yeah.
Unforeseen and events over which you had little, if any, control was the whole COVID thing, which introduced this homeless, and I still use that term. I know other people are calling it unhoused, but to me it's homeless. Those are the homeless people. And Rutland bore the brunt of that statewide. There's no two ways about that. But we didn't see that coming. Nobody had any idea that would be part of our landscape. And then public safety, which I think is a direct result of that homeless situation. The more people that you sort of, and forgive me, stuff into a hotel or a motel, the more likely you are to have negative impacts to the area surrounding that. And that's happened. So we've got a little bit more progress that we did make on it. But there's still a huge thing and Representative Eric McGuire is right on top of that. He's got a bill coming out that I think will address some of that, and kudos to him for that. What else can you point to as sort of positive things that have happened during your tenure?
Yeah, I'll focus on the homeless thing for the transitional housing and homeless thing for a second, and then I'll talk about, I do want to kind of recap some of the other stuff, but when I took office, we had over 450 families staying in Rutland City hotels. And, we've talked about it on the show before, Brian. Those 450 families were accepted because our hotel owners were willing to accept those vouchers, right? That's why Rutland had more. Yep. It wasn't because Burlington didn't have more hotel rooms. It's just the hotel owners weren't willing to take those vouchers, right? So we have gotten the state to commit to, not just in Rutland, but across the state, balancing those numbers out more fairly. And when I say fairly, I mean there's resources that have to take place here. Our police department, our fire department, our building and zoning have to make sure everything is running correctly. Then you've got Rutland Mental Health and Brock and these organizations that only have so many resources and energy to help the people that need it. So we're down to under 200 families staying in the Rutland hotels, and it's even less than that, which is great. And that's partially because of the state the administration working on giving that up. Senator McGuire's bill, 594, I think it is.
Yep.
Right? Really puts a new program in place that says this is how we're going to attack the challenge of homelessness in Vermont. And I would encourage anybody who's listening right now to go look it up, look at the testimony. It is probably the most comprehensive human services bill we've seen in a long time, and it is fantastic. So I'm very proud of the work that Rutland has done with our community partners to get the state and the legislature to recognize, and Eric's a Rutland rep, which is fantastic, to recognize what we need to have done across the state. The other accomplishments, I do want to talk about the TIF district for a minute. 20 years. We have a 20-year TIF district now, Brian.
Yep.
And it focuses on our downtown. The first project is kicked off. This hotel is going to get built. Center Street, which we've talked about since 1973. We can go back to 1973 and look at documents talking about revitalizing Center Street. It's going to get done. We have the neighborhood development area. We're working on Tier 1A status. That's almost done. The state just has to approve it so that Rutland City, the entire city, is no longer subject to Act 250. That means that developers can come in and lower the cost. And that's one of the big things that we've really focused on, is allowing people to come and develop in our city. We're talking about people to come build homes or new businesses at a lower cost. It was very expensive to do business here. It was hard because our timelines were, it takes 180 days to get a permit. We shortened that up, right? You get to fill out, the cities has permission to take 180 days to fill out the permit.
Yep. We
changed the policy. We want to turn those permits around as quickly as possible because developers, two things, time and money are what prevent them from doing projects, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So big push in there. So TIF district and the hotel is big. The housing work we've done, we brought $8 million in state money to Rutland, and it's a loan. It's not a grant. It's not money the state's giving away. It didn't come off of your taxes. It was part of the surplus. That is new dollars in Rutland that are going to get paid back to the state. It's just sitting in their bank account, and that has been huge, and we've seen a lot of development from that. And what this does, it all connects together. The affordability crisis in Rutland is directly connected to the fact that we have had a declining population since the 1980s. When I moved to Rutland in 89 with my family, I was 9 years old. There were 20+ thousand people living here, right?
I remember.
And now there's 16,000. That's a 4,000 person gap. That's no wonder it's expensive to live here. So between the TIF district, our new increasing, even though the state of Vermont's population decreased in this last census, Rutland still went up. So we are trending in the right direction there. I'm super proud of that and the work that our teams have done to get there. And this is not all me, by the way. I just lead the charge some days. Most of the time, there's a lot of people in the background doing work. So super proud of the population growth, working towards affordability with things like the capital improvement program and the 1% option tax. Brian, for the first time since I've been alive, the city of Rutland has a capital program, meaning that if something is broken or is going to break, it's not going to go on the property taxpayer, right? It's going to come out of this planned, decision-making process of how do we fix the broken boiler or how do we fix the broken roof without raising taxes. Yep. That's a big deal for affordability. Oh, yeah. We're really excited about it. Yep. So that's just a quick list. I know we've got a certain amount of time. We talk a lot of stuff. But.
Well, we've got enough time left to talk about a lot of different things. It's interesting you mentioned, because I came to Rutland in 72, and I can remember there being, I want to say 23,000 people. It was in that neighborhood at least. Yeah. And, people left, or people died and we didn't replace them. I hate, that's probably a bad way to say it, but it's life. Yeah. But it's interesting. This week from the U.S. Census, the state of Vermont, for the second year in a row, has lost population.
That's right.
A 0.3% decline between July 24 and July 25. It's the highest percentage of any state in the country. So what it means is there's 1,800 fewer people living in Vermont now than there were last year, and that's not a good trend at all. I don't know whether people, again, have moved to warmer climates, or moved west or just moved east. I know a couple of people that moved to New Hampshire, but they're not in Vermont anymore, so they would be included in that number. And this is, again, the second year in a row that we've had a decline in population. It's the highest in the country. And then there's other states, and you can probably guess who they are. Florida is the top state. They had about 800,000 people move into Florida.
That's right.
And, those are huge numbers. I mean, that's more than the whole state of Vermont. But there's probably reasons for that. So it isn't just a Rutland City phenomenon. In fact, it's probably more of a Chittenden County phenomenon than anything, if what I hear is true, where people, again, are just sort of, their affordability is gone. They don't feel particularly safe in some areas of Chittenden County. And, people have just had enough and they're going other places. I don't think that's necessarily true here, but we have lost people. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think Rutland's managed to sustain the past few years and grow a little bit. While the state's trending down a tiny bit, and Rutland has managed to sustain and grow. And we're seeing it, right? We're seeing more apartments, more units come online, vacant houses now be filled. But we focused on that. And affordability is not the only thing. Affordability, public safety, those components are the things that fight that, the focus that we have, but we're addressing them. So I think what you'll find is the next administration, the current board, and the next administration, as long as they continue to focus on public safety, affordability, and growing our housing, Rutland will continue to be the epicenter of Southern Vermont, like we've tried to make it the last few years. Yeah. We have more businesses in our storefronts than we did 4 or 5 years ago. We have more activity in our downtowns, more restaurants open than we have in a long time. So the general feel here is the growth, and we just got to keep that momentum. So you see that happen. More people move to Florida, but there are towns in Florida with less people in them. We're just doing the opposite, right? So.
And my question, back to the U.S. Census thing, not all those 1,800 people lived alone.
Right.
But let's say 700 of them were part of the 1,800. Who's in those houses or apartments now?
That's right.
We continue to say that we have a housing crisis, and yet, to me, this question should be answered too. What did we do with the 1,800 people that left? Where did they live, and who moved in?
And it's not all Airbnbs. I'll tell you. Yeah. People try to default to that, but in Rutland we only have so many, right? And throughout the state we only have so many. So it's a great question, and that will probably come out. The real next census is going to be 2030, right? When we get the real data. This is sample data, and so it'll be interesting to see the 10-year trend post-COVID and what's happened over the last 10 years.
We're talking to Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges, who will be leaving office 20 days from when you hear this. This program will air on the 7th of February. On the 27th, that'll be Mike's final day. Town meeting will follow the week after, and that is when there will be a write-in ballot for you to use to decide who will be the next mayor of the city of Rutland. We're going to take our second break here on Catamount Community Connection, and I want to talk about the new job that he has coming up, and I know Mike wants to recognize some city staff folks as well who have performed admirably, and we'll be back with more of Mike Doenges in just a minute. Welcome back to Catamount Community Connection, our weekly public affairs show here on Catamount Radio. I'm Brian Collamore. Thank you for joining us. And today we are speaking with outgoing Mayor Mike Doenges. Our show brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. Just thinking about the fair makes me feel a lot warmer. We've suffered through, at least last week, some below zero temperatures, and I guess the older you get, the more you notice it. I didn't seem to ever notice it in my 40s and 50s, but by golly, I've noticed it this year. So it'll be a lot warmer when we have the fair in town in August. And thank you again to the Rutland County Agricultural Society for their continuing sponsorship of this program. So we've talked with the mayor about the timing of the announcement, why he did what he did and when. He didn't have a job on the line until he got informed that day. So that was when he made the announcement. To our knowledge, at least when we're recording this, again, it's on January 31st. There's only one announced candidate that is interested in having you write his name in on town meeting day to become the new mayor. By the time you hear this, there may be others, and there may be others later too. There's right up until town meeting. That's what a write-in ballot would mean. Right as you walk in the door, you could still write in anybody you want, and we'll have to see how that goes on town meeting week. Let's talk about some of the city staff that I know you want to recognize. We seem to oftentimes, and I feel so badly for the folks that plow our roads. They've had a tough winter this year, and I keep hearing about a salt shortage. I know Rutland is facing that, and we're not alone. Trust me. I drove up to the State House now 2 or 3 weeks ago. I could not exceed 30 miles an hour on Route 100 or Route 107, and then when I got on the interstate, it wasn't much better. So, but anyway, Public Works has done, I think, as good a job as they can do without. And the other problem is when it's too cold, the salt doesn't work anyway. So, but I'm sure there are other staff that you want to thank.
Yeah, it was actually good time. I was talking to my DPW commissioner about the salt, and it was good timing that it was so cold after that snow, because they wouldn't have laid salt down anyway, because it just wouldn't have done anything. So, the salt shortage is something else, and we've had salt on order since this summer. It's been problematic. That's something you'll hear coming up. I won't be in office anymore, but getting a bigger salt shed for the city and doing it with those capital improvement funds, it's a perfect example of not raising the tax rate to solve a problem that we need. So, but DPW, police, fire, recreation, our clerk's office, our treasurers, our city assessor, HR, and legal. I mean, right now we don't have a city attorney, but we have a legal assistant, and she's absolutely incredible. And our building and zoning and planning teams. So that's, every single one of those department heads and their teams has put the passion for Rutland first, right? It does not matter to them about the fodder going on, the politics. They have always driven forward to do the best job they can for the people of the city. And that has been a blessing for myself as mayor, right? How easy has it been for me to sit down with people and say, we need to do this because this is what's going to help our community, and for have them to say, yes, absolutely, or even give some ideas. Most of the time, they're the ones giving me the ideas of how we can get stuff done. They're coming to me and saying, hey, Mike, we see this problem here. This is something we want to solve. Can you help us solve it, right? And we have great what we call interdepartmental communication. Mm-hmm. That's one thing we're super proud of as a team. When I came online, everybody kind of did their own thing. Now we share resources. It saves the taxpayer money. We plan projects together. Saves the taxpayers money and produces a better result. And we communicate challenges before they become big issues, and it allows us to solve things early on. And our departments communicating and working so cohesively together is something that I'm super proud of in the last 3 years. So for me, that I see that at the department head level, but I know we have managers and staff that are out there doing the work every day. And the reports I get back from those leaders is just how impassioned and driven people are to do the work. So even when you turn on your water and get a glass of water, I know those guys are excited to do their job every day, and that makes the water taste a little better in its own way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we had a tour of the plant right off the road there on the post road, and a very impressive group that was there. To me, and just one man's opinion, the succession of a particular head of a department at this level speaks to the institutional knowledge that person could bring to the job and the sort of stability that department would have. And it seems like I see the same names for years in some of the departments. We've obviously, we're going to have a new mayor, so I can't say that that's true. But, and the rec director has changed as well. But for the most part, but there's a succession plan there. So you kind of look down the list of employees and say, okay, who might be in a great position to lead this department the next time? Yeah,
the succession planning was a big piece of what we need to do. We have so many people retiring over the next few years too, that we have been very focused, and Ellen Coyle, who's our HR director, has been very, very focused on making sure that not only do we have succession planning in place, but we have the right training for people who are moving out of like a non-management role into manager roles because they have the skills, but maybe they've never been a manager before. So she's put the pieces in place to help keep that knowledge in the city. And it's so important. Like if you look at the rec, these guys are out there, the maintenance team, they're out there working on these fields every day. Well, that's a skill set. Like It's not like mowing your front lawn. There's a lot of turf management's a thing, man. And so it's interesting to see that come along. And I said this to you before we were on the air is, listen, there have been times where the city mayor has been out for months, whether it's due to illness or whatever it happens to be, and the city continues to operate. That's because these teams work like clockwork and they have the components in place. So it's so important to recognize that even though there's going to be a change in mayor, even though I'm leaving, the operational aspects of the city will continue to move forward smoothly because those department heads are doing a great job and their teams are doing great jobs too. One of the other group of people I really want to thank, Brian, in the community is our partners. When you look at the partners, whether it's the Regional Planning Commission or CEDAR, which used to be Reddick and the Chamber, or Homeless Prevention Center or Brock, Come Alive Outside, and I'm not gonna be able to list everybody, but all of these different organizations that have been rowing in this direction of trying to make Rutland the most welcoming, enjoyable, affordable, safe place to live for the people that live here and for the people that want to live here. They've been doing that long before I became mayor. And when I got the job, to have so many of them come straight to me or open their doors to me to come and talk to them and say, hey, let's work together. And to be able to leverage those partnerships to get us, like the downtown partnership, they're communicating about what's going on Center Street. To leverage those partnerships to really move Rutland in a forward direction has been phenomenal. And so it's not just the staff in City Hall, but it's all these other organizations that aren't directly connected to government that are doing good work. And it's such a blessing to have that in Rutland. Not every community has that.
Yeah. We're talking to Rutland City Mayor Mike Doenges for our last time, because by the time you hear this program, he will have 20 days left in office. And we want to now talk, finally, we have about 5 minutes left, about the new opportunity that has presented itself. I understand, though, that you will remain in the city. So I'm assuming some of this will be virtual work. Maybe not. I don't know.
So it is hybrid work with travel, just to be clear.
Okay.
So I'll still have a presence in the city. I'll be here plenty. But I'm going to be, the territories in Ohio, so I'll be there too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In Ohio, if you remember, before I moved back in 2016, I was out in Ohio working for the company out there. So this is the team I actually started with. There was a retirement on the team and vacating a position that's pretty critical to the success of that part of the organization. And they had reached out to me and said, hey, we think you'd be perfect fit for this role. We want you to come back. And that was my teammate. His name was Steve, great guy, that's retiring. And so my first question, like I said, to them was, hey, can you wait a year? And Steve's like, no, I'm not waiting a year to retire. So sadly, and so it truly is one of those once in a lifetime opportunities. Most of my positions, I've stayed at companies for longer times. I know people my age tend to job hop every 2-3 years. I've been on, 7 years at Omea, 9 years at Cisco. So this is just going back to get back on that in that corporate space and really to go build that business and that team.
Well, I assume planes will be a bigger part of your life in the next few years, because I don't think you'd be driving or commuting to Ohio. But, so that brings up the Rutland Airport, where, again, we have the ability here for, I can't remember, it's $79, $80 each way to get to Logan. And then from there, you can go anywhere.
That's right.
But you are going to continue to live here.
Absolutely. And before I was mayor, that's what I did from 2016 right up until 2023, sans COVID, right? I traveled out of the Rutland Airport a couple times a week and went back and forth. So, I'll absolutely have a presence in Ohio, but I'm keeping my house in Rutland, staying there, So how much time in each place? I negotiated a little bit in my contract. That's to be seen how we land that. But this will be home, and we'll have to see. Is it 51% of the time there or 51% here? I'll make sure that I register appropriately in the state that I am.
There you go. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, right. So,
what is Cisco? Because for those of us that have no idea,
there are two out there that come to mind when people think of Cisco. SYSCO, which is a food service company.
Right, and that's what I thought.
Right?
And I thought, geez, that's a new thing for them.
CISCO,
Yeah.
which is a technology company.
Okay.
And that's the one that I've worked for many years. And they're based in San Jose. They have presence all over the world. And, even sitting in this studio, there's 3 pieces of Cisco technology in here.
Okay.
Most people have a piece of Cisco technology in their home and they don't even know it. And it's just the internet runs on Cisco, and that's how networks work. And that's been my specialty since I was in my 20s. So.
Well, it's interesting you stayed in touch with Steve because it's been a while, right? So would you say 89? But you were still here. Yeah.
I was here, yeah. No, so I left Ohio in 2016.
Oh, 16. Okay, it's still a way. I mean, it's a few years.
Yeah, it's funny because we didn't really stay in touch that much. They just, wanted to, because I was such a, it's a pretty tight-knit team, and leaving the team was, interesting thing back in the day, and when I got the phone call, it was really nice to be considered. So.
Okay. Well, we've come to the end of another Catamount Community Connection. As I mentioned a couple times during the show, this will be Mike Doenges' last appearance as mayor. We will hopefully have him back on in some fashion. So again, I think on behalf of folks that listen and city residents, want to thank you for your service and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. And Brian, I absolutely, it was an honor to serve. I appreciate every minute of the job and being able to be here and be a part of Rutland's growth and potentially set Rutland up for future success. And I'm grateful for every minute of that. So thank you so much.
Sure. Well, luckily you'll be around to see the fruition and the continuing progress, I think, in that direction, hopefully.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. All right, Michael, thank you very much. We will let it go at that, and we will see all of you next week here on Catamount Community Connection.